Tonight we're going to welcome one of the authors of the book, Elaine Mills. She's practiced landscape architecture in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and historic preservation at the Lawrenceville School. She's currently a writer, designer, and project manager at Architectonica GEO in Miami. Please let's give her a nice warm welcome. After all that.
And we can turn the lights on. I want you all to be able to see the photos because they are the star of the show. Steve did such a nice job of the introduction. I'll just mention that I grew up in Buffalo, New York, a little bit different than Miami. And then I spent 28 years in central New Jersey. And then when my husband took a job at Ransom Everglades 4 years ago, it was like starting over. It's kind of like coming to Dr. Seuss's garden. And so I did a one-year internship at Fairchild to learn all of the amazing things you have here. And that's where I met Joanna Lombard. And when she was unable to take on the entire writing of the project, she recommended me and introduced me to the villagers. So I was privileged to be able to visit 26 of the 27 gardens, be able to learn your stories, and be able to write about them. And it was truly my pleasure. Okay, so let's see if I can find the button. Okay, so Steve, is there a way to focus it? So while he does that, I'll just mention, first of all, when he loaded them, he said, "Oh, you have so many slides." So I'm going to have to move a little bit quickly, and hopefully we'll be in better focus. But Joanna's introduction briefly covers the 100 years of history of gardening in Miami, the botanists and the explorers, the scientists and the gardeners who have tried to tame this place or who have embraced it just the way it is, and who are now working to either put it back or just make it their own personal sanctuaries. There are some wonderful quotes here from David Fairchild, who says, in observing from the Tamiami Trail, he says that this area is a superb landscape that has taken perhaps many thousands of years to produce, and the like of which was to be found nowhere else on the planet. And John Kunkel Small says, the floristics of temperate, subtropics, and tropic regions not only meet, but mingle here, and we are the beneficiaries. So in this book, it's not just a pretty picture book. It is a resource. It's an idea book. It is a wish book. And again, it's the resource where 9 of our preeminent gardens in South Florida are covered. This page shows Vizcaya, and it also shows the resources, the clubs. It was very important to Dolly and the rest of the villagers that people who want to garden be able to find the information that they wanted and to be able to connect with other gardeners. We have quite a variety of gardens here, from the smallest to the largest. And this one in particular is our smallest garden. But on this page, you can see that the garden has a narrative. What I did was I met with the owner, a very enthusiastic gardener, and she poured her soul out to me, and as did so many other owners or designers. And it was my job, my ginormous task, to be able to convey that to you in a way that made you feel like you were there and want to know more about it. And the captions tell you a little bit about what's in these gardens and in the images, but it is not intended to be academic. It is not intended to tell you what every single plant is, but just express the joy of each of these gardens. We have very formal gardens, some of the grander ones. We have historic preservation gardens. We have some modern gardens. They're just beautiful. And we have the clipped and formal. And we have the wild and wonderful. We have plant collections from all over the world. And we have art collections from all over the world. And we have plants serving as art mounted on the wall. And we have plants turned into art mounted in the gardens. And we have historic remnants that have been repurposed into waterfalls that add joy to each garden. Whoops, whiz past one. See if I can get back. And in some of our gardens, we celebrate challenges. We embrace the challenges. We celebrate the triumphs and being able to overcome and the healing power of gardens. And we celebrate the healing that people can do to the land that we occupy. Our gardeners and our horticulturists, our designers and owners paint with plants, and they paint with hard materials, and they paint with light, and they paint with water, and with every color and texture of green available to us. And we follow these paths, and sometimes at the end there's a magnificent view. So I'm going to take you on a brief tour of each garden, one picture, I'm afraid, of each garden from south to north. Whoop, moved too fast, sorry. So that was just a very briefest of tours. But Dolly asked me to pick several gardens that I found inspiring or had an interesting story to tell. Things that I wanted to share with you. Tales from Behind the Hedges is the name of this presentation. And there are so many. And just like, as you might imagine, it was a difficult decision to try to decide which gardens, sometimes heated discussions about which gardens to be in the book. It was very challenging for me to decide which ones to speak about, so I apologize to those who don't get a little bit extra attention, but I don't have all night, and you might not buy the book if I tell you about them all. So, so the goal is to buy the book, right, Dolly? Okay. So nearly 100 years ago, Charles Torrey Simpson dedicated his book to Mr. Charles Deering, who instead of destroying the hammock is creating it. And his brother James Deering preserved 90% of Ascaya's 180 original acres as native landscape, very little of which remains, as you know. So I want to give special commendations and thanks to the first three gardens I'm going to talk about, because these owners shared their passion and their enchantment with the native landscapes of South Florida, the places that we all need to work hard to get into. They've brought into their own gardens, and I think it's important to call them out and how special they really are. One is a hammock, one is a cypress swamp, and one is a pine rockland, and I found them inspirational, and I hope you do too. So when I interviewed the owners, the message that they wanted me to say to you is to just start. Stick a plant in the ground, and then stick another one, whether it's in a pot or anywhere, just start. And this one is our largest garden at 20 acres, and I think it's going to be growing. I hope it is. But it's comprised of about 4 or 5 acres of environmentally, ecologically sensitive lands. I can't remember what the EEL stands for. It is extraordinary forest, and most people would walk by a hammock and not really think about it, but they are restoring it. They're removing invasives. But in the center of it is this lawn and this amazing banyan and a home, and then a large portion of the property is actually former nursery operations that as the nursery pulls out, they're restoring it. They're putting it in to be a Florida landscape. So there's a lot of paths that lead off from that lawn, just beautiful paths through this dense jungle. And it's hard to imagine that this area was a blasted nursery landscape not too many years ago. And the plants that were put in were 3 to 7 gallon. The largest plant, I understand, was 25 gallon. And in the South Florida, it just takes off. So it's just extraordinary. And you can see the lime rock that's been quarried on site, and it's just fills in within 6 months, and ferns, and it's just absolutely stunning. And it leads to this gorgeous pond that had 6-inch koi and now has 3-foot koi and 16-foot waterfalls. Just absolutely gorgeous. And multi-levels. This rustic furniture is on a cliff overlooking the pond. And there's ancient art, sandstone sculptures. There's just amazing art tucked in every corner. Beautiful giraffes. I love that they're eating the tree. And here's the only shot that we have of the forest, the actual beautiful preserved forest. And this gateway, I believe it's a lychee tree root, and it is worth exploring. If you get close enough, you can see carvings of creatures in there. And this is the most extraordinary thing. When I was invited to the property, they said, "Oh, this was the first property I visited." And they said, "Oh, do you want to see the house?" And I was like, "Oh, no. I don't want to impose. I don't want to, trouble you. It's about the garden." And he said, "No, you really need to come in to see the house." And I'm so glad I did because, and in fact, Stephen didn't take a picture of it. And I thought, oh my God, Stephen needs to go back and take a picture. And he did. And this is the one we have. I wish there were more because I think of it as an outside in-house. The roof is shingles, mossy shingles inside. And the only way I can describe this as a park pavilion with shade, or with, screens around this park pavilion. And within this park pavilion are these little 2 bedrooms that are individually air conditioned. But in the middle, in this space between these 2 bedrooms, in this shade structure, are a pool. There's a pond. There's fish. There's a rock wall with water flowing down, and all of this art and moss growing in the ceiling, and it is just extraordinary. Just extraordinary. So here's another property, another one of those wild ones. And this one is a swamp, as you can see. And I recall the gentleman saying, "If you plant it, they will come." And this started out as a mango and avocado plantation that was devastated in Hurricane Andrew. And there were no trees left, maybe 1 or 2 mangoes or an avocado. But this property had the irrigation pond on it. And after the storm, part of the recovery was lawn. They just put lawn around it, and it was really unsatisfying lawn. And this gentleman had spent a lot of time in the Everglades with his friends. It had been a transformative experience for him. And he and his buddies said, "You know what? Why don't we bring the Everglades here?" And so they just started. And it was a community effort, a healing effort. And it's just exceptional. There's a little island with red mangroves and sables. The trees. Envision this property with nothing on it after Hurricane Andrew. And if you plant it, they will come. The trees and the knees and the plants and the fish, the birds. And there's rustic furniture, places to appreciate from every angle. And the light, when I was there, the light was reflecting off the pond. The water was so still, the light was reflecting on the undersides of the tree leaves, and it was just beautiful. And this is a neighborhood place where all of the kids come to feed the fish. So, the third one, a pine tree grows in Wynwood. When you think about Wynwood, let's all envision Wynwood. I know what you're thinking. This is what you're thinking, right? This is the only picture I have of a before. Stephen didn't have any before pictures in his book, but I wanted to show you what this thing looked like. So this is 100. The lot is 100 feet by 50 feet. The gentleman who owns it owns also the house next door, and the lot right behind the camera, and the house right to the right of the back of the camera. And when planting a tree, a palm tree, a coconut, on the tree behind the camera, on the lot behind the camera, they hit rock. And the person said, well, this is lime rock. There must have been pine rockland here sometime long ago. Let's see what's under there now. So they dug it out and dug it out and dug it out, and they found 3 solution holes. And now it looks like this. And it is extraordinary. And he talks about the light, about how it's always cool, and there's always creatures. There's in the middle of Wynwood. It is extraordinary. I keep saying that word, but they were all extraordinary. So this sand track through the property, actually it's hard to tell by the picture, but it dips down because they excavated, and what they did was they took the rubble that was filling the solution holes in order to make it that level, nasty lawn. They actually filled the solution holes with rubble, lime rock rubble. So what they did was they piled it up. There's the before and after right there of that same aspect. So they took the lime rock that was filling those nasty holes, and they piled it up and made retaining walls. And then they planted, oh gosh, I meant to look up the number, 27 Dade County pines. More than one pine tree grows in Wynwood, believe it or not. And they're looking beautiful. And this gentleman is associated with Fairchild, and he was able to use Fairchild's resources. Any one of you can, if you choose to have a pine rockland on your property, you can be involved with the Connect to Protect network, where you can share resources, information, get plants, and he opens it up to the volunteers at Fairchild. Many of the plants are actually labeled, and he brings groups, students, classes from the local schools, and he hosts gatherings for Art Basel in this garden. And he has a lot of rare, beautiful Florida plants, and the creatures do come. So that driveway reminds him of his Iowa farm track. So now we're moving to the colorful, fun, and funky in Coconut Grove. And a very talented couple, artists both, collectors both. And I do recall him saying, it turned out better than we imagined it would. In fact, they also said, we just want to come home and hug our house. That everything in it is just so special and has meaning and conjures up friends. And I'm going to show you a lot more pictures with tile. But I really, truly felt like if I stood still long enough, I was going to be covered with tile, and I was going to be better for it. I would have been better. So this is actually the inside of the house. And just a standard U-shaped concrete block house that they bought long ago, in 1978, I think, as I recall. And they had hurricane impact, too. They lost a lot of trees. But this U-shaped, the interior of the U-shape, which used to be the outdoors, is now the indoors. And this, what looks like a glass wall, I don't know if it's glass or plexiglass, but they've brought the inside out and the outside in. The art is inside, the plants are inside, the art goes outside, and the plants go outside. It's just amazing. And the pattern on the wall, as I recall, is from Native Americans. They're just regionally influenced the Haiti and the Caribbean and South Florida, and the Seminoles really influenced them. And it was just a pleasure to explore it. And it is the most colorful property, hands down. This is the little space between the back of the house and the studio. This is a pergola in the backyard, and every little thing has a story. And as I recall, the logs came from the Suwannee River. They were submerged 60 to 80 years, and they were 100-year-old logs hauled out, used at the as part of the pergola roof on these aluminum pipes, and the columns were plastered by the lady of the house, and as I recall, imprinted with palm fronds and inflorescences, and just using every form of texture and art available to them. Panels that have meaning to them, as I said, mosaics. Absolutely gorgeous. And repetition of colors and materials throughout just tie it all together. So a little bit more sedate. Very spa-like, very zen-like. This is a home. I'm calling it a river runs through it, because once you walk through this gateway, there's actually a little trickle of water, a rill, that meets you in that little vestibule area, and you step inside on the other side of the fence, and it is pretty amazing. So this runnel comes through, and it runs along the property. These beds of fern, just soothing palettes of gray and stone and concrete and fern. The buttonwoods are gray, and the water runs through. And the house on the left is actually built like a square with a hole in the middle, an atrium in the middle. And as you'll see, there's this beautiful atrium. But the water, this river, runs through this courtyard, past this little sculpture, past the silk floss tree that's blooming when they're in residence in the winter, and across or under this driveway. This is actually a driveway that goes to the carport. So they very cleverly multi-purposed everything on this tiny 1/3 acre lot. So you can host large gatherings in this driveway that doesn't look like a driveway. And there's several areas like that. So this is the atrium in the middle. And there's a water garden in there. And through those doors in the back, once those doors open, you actually look over the pool and look out to the bay. And they have these really cool little planters built into the wall with orchids and air plants and anthuriums. And this is the bay. And that runnel of water trickles around the pool. And the colors are just soothing, so that the bay actually gets to be the star of the show. So this one is very Polynesian. It's got five structures on 5 acres on an island in Miami Beach, and very much of a tropical influence. The family has several properties, and this is their most tropical, and this is where they want to just not think about anything. They just want to let it go. And what's remarkable about this is that the house is actually visually becomes an island. It's surrounded by pools of all kinds and all depths and all temperatures. There's warm water and cold water. But this one is actually the street side, where there's a shallow pool where the grandkids can safely play. And as you approach the house from the street side, you see these pools, and the house is on the other side. But then when you get on the other side of the house, it's like the house is an island within an island. And this is the deep water pool, and the house wraps around it. And the walls of the house, the walls of the pool are actually submerged. So you can get from that deck to the lawn by walking on this just slightly submerged, maybe 2 inches, walkway that maybe is a foot that separates the different depths of the pool. And you get this unique impression of being able to walk on water right out to the bay. And within the U of the house is this lovely little fountain area, a very zen area that's visible from 3 wings of the house through the floor-to-ceiling windows. There's these pathways. This white stone appears to float over the water. The lily pond is actually a separate water system because the chlorinated water in the pool would not be conducive to the water lilies, and then that little trickle basin in the middle. And much of the pool is covered with these black mortared pebbles that have a black, the mortar is black, the pebbles are black. It all just really recedes visually, and it's just sublime. And there's an area where this floating walkway steps down towards the bay. And there's an elevated hot tub along the bayfront. And of course, this is their view. Hard to beat. And if the camera just turned to just a little bit to the left, you would see the gantries at Miami Beach. So, at the Port Miami. So, amazing. So this is the last garden that I'm going to go into depth on, but it's really very classical. They wanted to be different. They needed some privacy. It's a 4-acre property, and a very talented designer who interpreted what the family wanted. And it's a family with 2 young girls, and they wanted the girls to be safe above all, and they wanted to provide a place where they could play and just be kids and learn and experiment and run and ride their rollerblades and have a soccer match and be able to entertain, of course. And this LA that comes in, that gate at the distance comes in from the street. And when you arrive through that gate, you actually go through an LA of sycamore trees. How unusual is that for Miami? Sycamore trees grow here? They do. American sycamore trees grow here. And it comes back to that remarkable microclimate that we have here, where we can grow tropical, subtropical, and temperate plants. And these are temperate plants. And just picture them in a couple more years when their canopy is meeting and they've been limbed up a little bit, and it's just going to be an incredible cathedral effect that harkens back to their memories of time in Connecticut. The gentleman really enjoyed his time in Connecticut, and so the landscape actually has Belgian block paving and bluestone paving and American sycamores, but it's also blended with tropics and fruit trees for the kids to play in, rose garden that the kids get to play in, and ginormous trees. And apparently the collection of trees started with a kapok. And the designer said to me, "It's the kapok started all the trouble." I think the kapok is the one in the right, though, with the buttresses. I think this is a baobab. But they hunted long and far for amazing big trees to bring in, and apparently the owner had to give a final hug before the tree could actually be purchased and brought in. These trees, these gigantic trees, including this one on the left, which is one of 2 sandbox, Hura crepitans, with these crazy spikes on the sides, they are surrounding a raised lawn, and the lawn is just velvety. And I think there might be something funky like a septic tank under that, but you would never imagine it. And there is this circular path that goes all the way around this raised circular lawn, and azaleas, northern azaleas, are growing there too. Just amazing. And tropical fruit trees behind it, and astonishing. Irises, There, I think in the back is a bougainvillea tree. And then there's lots of paths, and there's curving paths, and they are all designed, at least maybe not the one on the right, but most of them are, you know, they want the girls to be riding their rollerblades through them. So like it's very, very family friendly. And there's straight paths through ancient fountains and past orchids. And this is actually the side yard. What a beautiful side yard, right? We should all be so lucky. And on the left is a grotto, a lime rock grotto, with echo chamber, a drip chamber that echoes, the drips fall down into the middle basin and echo throughout with light candle niches. And this is the girls' playhouse on the right, set within a butterfly garden, and on the other side is a rose garden. Beautiful. This is the same angle over the pool house to the left, and on the right is another garden room, separated by hedges that are pleached hedges. They've been pruned up, so you can actually see when you're sitting in the pool house, you can actually see under the hedges through the next garden room and the one after that. And then this is the Sunken Garden, the play lawn, the soccer stadium. Someday it might have a fountain. There's plumbing there, but right now the girls are enjoying it for soccer matches. And that giant tree in the back is that sandbox tree, Hera crepitans. So this is a view from the west loggia of the home, across the water lily garden, to the temple-like office on the mound. I think there's an exercise station underneath it, an exercise room, but that's where the business is conducted, up on the mound. And this is that middle room. Those pleached raised hedges are on either side, so the pool is to the right, and that raised velvety lawn is to the left. And this is the view from the mound back towards the home. And that was the last of the gardens I wanted to explicitly explain to you. And I wanted to dedicate this book and this presentation to the owners and the designers. Thank you for sharing your secret gardens, your private spaces, and your personal stories. Each one is a marvel and an inspiration. And special thanks to all of the sponsors, especially the garden masters, Sandy McCarthy and Arthur Hertz. As a result of your support, 100% of the book sale proceeds will go towards grants for historic preservation and scholarships. And then finally to Dolly, for her passion for historic preservation and Coral Gables over the last 50 years. This book is her dream realized, and it was made possible by a host of villagers and other contributors, especially Julie Patola Arch, co-chair with Dolly. And just as a reminder, it was Joanna Lombard who did the introduction. She was here earlier but had to leave. Photography and book design by Stephen Brooke. And he was not able to be here, unfortunately. And Julie and I did the writing. And thank you all. Thanks for being here. Did anybody have any questions or anything like that?
Can I ask you a quick question about the Wynwood garden? I might have missed it, but how long did it take that man to do that from scratch to start? Do you know?
You know what? I don't recall offhand. It might have been 2012. I don't think it's been that long.
That short of time?
Mm-hmm. I can find out for you. Anybody else? Great. Thank you all for being here.
Folks, I do have the books for sale behind the counter in the front. If as you rise, you could fold your chairs and lean them across the back, it'll give us a lot of room in here. She'll be sitting right over here signing the book. Thank you so much for coming.